Do what you need to do while people are joining.
Yeah.
You have something you're working on?
Nothing actually fun. I'm just getting caught up on like Christmas presents still. And it's a lot of like washcloths and like dish scrubbies because my family and friends just love them. Like so much that like it's like my friends' grandmothers that are requesting them. I'm like, it's just a square, but I love that you're coming to me for it.
Oh, that's so
That's
sweet.
nice.
That's funny.
Yeah. And it's just fun to use like my extra cotton yarn.
Yeah.
It's like kind of fun. Funky colors.
What is that? Is that 2 strands together?
Yes, it is. So one is just regular cotton, and then the other is this like scrubby textured.
Oh, I've seen that before in the store, maybe in Michael's.
Yeah, I think Red Heart has some, and a couple others too. But I think Red Heart is the one I get it most often.
Oh, let me
Setting up all of my stitches fell off.
Oh no.
Okay.
Oh no.
We're
It's
saved.
because all right, I'm gonna post this. I can't type and talk at the same time. It's funny with like teaching new folks how to knit. They're like starting to feel more comfortable now, but now they're like, this loop fell off and I don't know what to do. And they're like, I frogged the whole project. And I'm like, no,
why?
Don't do that.
Oh my gosh. Never ever do that. That's not fun. I definitely think that I'm very much a visual person. So I always, when I'm like about to frog something, it's like, okay, what does this look like this? What does this stitch look like front and back? And that's how it helps me like fix what I've done wrong. Because if you don't know what it looks like, you don't know how to fix it really.
Yeah, exactly. I always say, I think for me anyway, that's the thing that really separates like a good knitter from a great knitter, like being able to read your work enough to be like, what the fuck happened? And like, how can I recover this? And so I'm always with them. I think they get frustrated because they're like, okay, I don't need to know that. I don't need to know why the stitch holds itself together that way. And I'm like, no, but you do. Learn it now.
Yeah.
You know it later.
It helps so much. And maybe it's because I started as like, I don't really read patterns. I've probably read and completed 2 projects. So 100% I did Chantel's My Beginner Raglan. I know I've done that. And I'm really struggling to come up with a second one, to be honest.
Oh, goodness.
Oh yeah. So I do remember one. I've done a triangle like bandana scarf. Very simple. I was more so supporting the maker at the time, so it was, but yeah, I always try to figure it out. So once I made the raglan, I did like 2 t-shirts. One is still on the needles, just has been sitting there for a year now. I decided to do a longer and like 3/4 length sleeve, and I just haven't gotten to the sleeves. Typical, right? And then the other one I did finish, but it wasn't a pattern. I just had measured I did it myself. I just never wrote the pattern because it's like, oh, I just wasn't confident in it. So
that's amazing. That's so cool to know. Like knowing you and know how much you knit, to know that your brain can just do that and like figure it out is impressive.
Lots of YouTube videos for sure. Like if I see a stitch or have to learn a stitch because I'm like, I want this to look like this, and I have to find it somehow. And so I do YouTube a lot. And looking at like the written portion, sometimes they'll put like what the pattern looks like via like text. And I'm like, That is so bizarre.
Yeah.
But now that I'm writing patterns and I have one dropping tomorrow, it's super interesting to me that I'm actually piecing it together when I really haven't looked at many patterns.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure will be a big risk later. So at some point it'll be like, oh wow, I'm really stumped by this, but it's just learning more.
Yeah. And it's funny because I feel like most people just learn the opposite direction. Like they start written and like really step by step hearing it and then learn to read it and see it. And just that more intuitive crafting that I think that usually comes later. So it's cool that that's a gift to have initially. And Karen, awesome. And I don't know who else is here, but 5 other people are here. It might be, I don't know if it counts us, but
I'm definitely on my computer, so I would say that counts as a follower.
Okay, so 4 other people are here, and I'm gonna hope that one of them's Mia and just say hi in case it is. If not, I'm sure she'll watch it later.
Hello.
Yes.
Hi, Karen.
Kind of my fave. Hi, Karen. And I say we jump in, and if folks join us, they join us. If not, they can catch us.
Are you working on anything quick before we jump in?
Yeah, I am actually. I'm working on not really Christmas knitting. It could have been Christmas knitting. They got other Christmas gifts. So this was just like, oh, if I have time, I want to make them these things. But now it's just after Christmas knitting. I'm working on a beanie that is for CJ, my nephew. And a little tiny beanie that's for the new baby. And it's so tiny. I'm like, how can this fit on a human's head? And then I'm just playing around with, when I'm designing patterns, actually work kind of like you, Darian. Like I have an idea in my head of like, oh, what I want this to look like if I was drawing it. And then I'm like, I think I know how to get my stitches to do that. So sometimes I'll just play around with things like this. Like, oh, I'll make them 2 beanies, adjust it a little bit. But this is a sneak peek of the pattern for Gilmore socks.
Oh, in a beanie. You did that with your other socks, right? The flannel.
Yep.
I like that a lot.
Yeah. But it's funny because I always did it the opposite direction, like socks first and then hat. And I was like, oh, I should play around with the pattern in a beanie because that's way quicker than doing socks first.
Yeah.
That's what I'm working on.
Nice.
Thanks for asking.
Of course.
And hello to everyone. If you're watching, let us know what you're working on. If you're watching this live, if you're watching later, drop it down below. Let us know what things you're crafting or doing with your hands at this time. I know I want to say hello and welcome to all the folks. If this is your first time, welcome to this fun collaborative that we started over 2 months ago now, which is...
I can't believe that, by the way. It's
crazy to me.
The longest, shortest year of our lives, somehow.
That's exactly it. I'm like, oh, I've been doing this forever. And like, also, oh my gosh, this just started. But over 2 months. So if this is your first time, welcome. Definitely go check out some of the other videos and other makers that joined me in the past few months. And if you are returning, welcome back. Thanks for coming back. Either way, I know I wanted to say thank you, and I'm sure Darian did too, for understanding and appreciating, respecting, I think, our decision yesterday to postpone this live. I think both of us felt there were more important things happening in the world, in our country, that needed to be attended to. And obviously taking care of yourself through all of that and life in this world is important, but I think it was a little distracting for both of us to try and come into a space and not be paying attention to what was happening on the news in the Capitol and not wanting to pull attention from that and hoping that other folks were also watching and learning and talking about what was going on. So I know I'm really appreciative. I won't speak for Darian, but I'll
I
say
am definitely appreciative too. It seemed like not the best time to talk about self-care when so many other lives are affected in such a negative way that it definitely felt better just to wait a day. So thank you.
yeah. And I'm glad to get back into it because I think yesterday, while it was an important thing to be attending to, it also isn't new. It isn't something that hasn't been happening. Hi, Ethan. Everybody say hi to Ethan. It's definitely not new, and it's definitely, I think, just the newest reflection of what's been happening for years and really been the forefront of lots of folks' attention this year. And so wanting to figure out how to continue keeping this and holding this most recent reminder of what's going on in our country there, and also ways to take care of ourselves and take care of each other. And so glad that we got together today, Darian, to chat. I'm super excited to have you here. And
Thank you.
Important for everyone to have space to think about healing and taking care of themselves and each other at a time like this. Hopefully, this collaborative is part of that. And if you're watching along with us live, definitely, I know Darian and I were chatting before, hoping that this space is a little bit of an interactive place where we can chat and hear from y'all about how you're doing and how you're taking care of each other and chiming in on some of the things Darian and I talk about tonight. And again, if you're watching not live, that doesn't mean you can't do that. Just pop it in the comments. I always check in on those. I'll make sure to bug Darian to also check in on those after the fact, and we can always continue the conversation in that way. And I also want to give you, Darian, a chance to introduce yourself because there might be folks here who don't know you. That feels so funny to say every time because I'm like, obviously people know you, especially if like you're here on my channel and one of my friends and I feel like we're tagging each other and posting about each other. They should know who you are, but in case they don't, go ahead and tell the people who you are, where you come from, where to find you, all that stuff.
Awesome. Okay, so I guess like we said, I'm Darian. You can find me at Knitting by Darian on Instagram and Facebook, and my own site, which is super cool. Brie also has her own site now, which is also super cool. I am currently in Syracuse, New York. I've been knitting for about 6 years. The turnaround from starting to knit to like having an Etsy and running a business was super quick. It was like 8 months or something. But the way I got into knitting, I always really like telling this story is
I don't know this either, which is kind of funny.
Oh, really? Oh, this is exciting. So I played field hockey from 7th grade all the way through college. I went to college. I did all 4 seasons. I didn't graduate, but yeah, played all 4 seasons. And it was my entire life. I spent like it was my entire life. I was on multiple teams throughout high school and college. I was always doing sports on top of field hockey, so soccer and or basketball. And I was just a super, super busy athletic person. And so when my field hockey career came to an end, my 4th year of college, I I walked off the field and I immediately was like, I'm lost. I don't know who I am. I think I'm going to graduate college and hopefully become a field hockey coach, which, as you guys can tell, I've noticed if you've seen my page, I'm not a field hockey coach. But I went to hang out with a friend immediately after my game, and we just sat there and she was knitting. And I was like, I want to try that. And within like 2 weeks, got needles and yarn. The yarn was 2 sizes too big for the needles, or the yarn was 4 sizes too small for the needle. The yarn was 4 sizes too small for the needles. And I have a really ugly scarf that I made Ethan. And well, when I say ugly, I guess I just mean like there's more stitches at one end than there is at the other. But I fell in love with it, and it gave me it filled my extra time because I went from having 0 time with being a college athlete and a D2 school to having like 60 extra hours a week. I felt like between study hall and practice and games and all the extra stuff. So knitting was something that really like filled that void that, to be honest, now that I'm older, was literally there for 10 minutes because I went from the field hockey game to my friend's house and she was knitting right there. But since then, I left college. I followed my fiance to Syracuse, New York. We've been here ever since. We have a dog, Riley, and 2 cats, MJ and Scotty. You'll probably see them at some point. Yeah, he's running around over there. Oh, Ethan's gonna bring him in, carrying him in like a little baby. Fun fact I always like to tell people too is I'm a twin. And a lot of people don't know that. See, you didn't even know that either. But yeah, I'm a twin.
Identical or fraternal?
Fraternal. We're super different. It's actually it's pretty crazy.
I didn't know that at all.
Yeah.
Were you like twins that were always together, went to school together, did all the same things, or like
up until I started playing field hockey, we had pretty much done everything together. So we played soccer on the same teams, basketball on the same teams, and then she went off and played volleyball. I went off and played field hockey, but we were still friends with all the jocks and stuff. So it pretty much until it was like till we went to college that we were just always together.
Wow. And then did you go to separate schools?
Yep. The first school I went to Roanoke College in Virginia. Beautiful, beautiful school. It was like my dream, like Southern school when I was a kid. And then it was too expensive and I had to transfer. So I came home to Pennsylvania and went to a state school out towards Pittsburgh, Indiana University of Pennsylvania. Which ended up being a really great move because I got a scholarship to play field hockey, playing field hockey at a D2 level, which was a level I felt like I should be at, which was really great. Like, yeah, so it was a good move.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's about me.
It's so funny, especially when I have people on here who I'm like actual friends with, and I'm like, oh my God, I didn't know these things about you. And it's really cool to hear your story because I think I knew that you had only been knitting for 6 years, and I guess only 6 years is a long time, but it still feels like new. I think when I see people who are like knitting, especially as much as you are, and so immersed in like designing and selling items and doing all this stuff, I'm like, oh my gosh, it must have been their whole life. And so it's really cool to hear your story. And like, it just strikes me. And if you are not an athlete, or if you've never been an athlete, and I didn't play in college, but like I was an athlete my whole life. And now working with a lot of athletes, especially at the college level, it's like, I don't think people realize it's more than just like a job or having so many hours. It's such a big part of your identity. And like everything about you is being an athlete, and all of the things that you do in your classes and your study hall and your meals are all around being an athlete. And like hearing you be like, oh, I was a twin. I am a twin. And then it sounds like your field hockey career is what kind of gave you your own individual identity, that I imagine it was really hard to lose that and feel, even if it was only for like 10 minutes, really lost and like nervous about now who am I and like who do I want to be?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It was definitely really hard because to be honest, like I think what helps, like you definitely just like defines who I was as an athlete. People asked me what I was going to school for, and I said to play field hockey. I wasn't going to get a degree. I was going to play field hockey, and it also never. I was gonna say like also feeds into the fact that like going to college is so forced. Like that's, I mean, I just wanted to play field hockey, and that was the way I could continue to play field hockey, even though I didn't graduate and I'm now in debt without a degree. So it's like,
yeah, that I think that's an expectation in society, or at least for me, where I grew up, which was like a pretty affluent area. Even though there was a lot of diversity, most folks had money, and it was always just an expectation. It wasn't like, are you going to college? It's where are you going to college? And now having left that area, like, and maybe being older and going to school for 10 million years, that I'm like, oh man, maybe going to school is not the only way to do this thing that we're doing. It also kind of,
yeah, especially because like what we said at the beginning with the way like I processed knitting and how I learned to write patterns was like, I mean, I've seen a handful of patterns really, and I figured it out by just looking at it and having my hands on it. And I mean, that's being an athlete too. How else do you learn to be an athlete other than to literally do it?
Yeah, that experiential, it doesn't matter how much you study or know or read, it's learning by doing. That seems to be your strong suit. I would imagine a lot of people's strong suit, but we're sometimes told that's not the right way to do it. Oh no, I was like, are you frozen on my screen? I'm also kind of curious too, because it's interesting to hear your story of where you started and like finding knitting to sort of fill that void in your identity and who you were and what you were going to do with literally all of the time that you had. And I'm wondering what knitting is for you now and if that's still the same. And I guess part of that wonder comes from, obviously this live is about self-care and taking care of yourself. And I'm wondering if your making fits into that at all, if it's evolved from what it originally was for you.
Yeah, I would definitely say it has evolved because the most recent, I think, like evolution of it has been probably the most eye-opening and like the most like confident building, and just like almost like an epiphany to me. But for sure in the beginning, it definitely was just a lot like just a time filler. Like I'm kind of an introvert. I didn't really go out a ton. Um, I had just an abundance of time to fill. And then I moved, and after leaving school, I had moved up to New York. And I mostly moved up here to take care of our cats because Ethan was studying abroad for the summer. Um, and I was watching the cats, but I am a major introvert who likes being on big teams my whole life. Um, moved to a new state without a job by myself, never have lived alone. And it was one of the most terrifying, longest weeks, or like it was like 3 weeks of my life, and way better of a person for it. Totally get that now. Probably wish I would have learned those weird lessons a different way, but like it was just one of those shocking experiences. And so then it really was like, this is all I have. I have these two cats that don't really like me, and I have knitting because I don't have a job. And so it just really consumed who I was for a long time, and I was finally like how can I make this like how can I make this more of a challenge, or make this something that is a little bit more engaging. And so my friends are like, just open an Etsy shop, like your stuff is cute, like it's cool, whatever, like you're learning. I did go to school for business, like
Okay.
um so it's not it wasn't like far off. And
Hmm.
so I just started opening an Etsy shop, and I was just super invested in learning a lot, and I really liked the process of do- doing all of that, and also just continuing to knit all the time. It also helped my anxiety, and like
Mm,
uh, being alone. It was just like I can either be stuck in my head and think crazy things,
mm.
or knit. And I actually learned to knit one sock at that time. I did. It was one sock and one sock only, and I have not touched socks since.
Why?
Um, I was just so intimidated by it, and then like that whole process, I think, of just like, when like you eat something and you get sick, and then
Uh-huh.
you're like, ooh, I don't like that thing anymore. I feel like socks might be that thing where I was like a little traumatized during this time in my life. And so I'm just like, every time I see socks, I'm like, oh no. But it's just like they're definitely growing on me much more after seeing and I just do chunky knits all the time. So now that I have friends that do a lot more, you and Wendy and everyone else like doing little knits, I think I definitely need to treat myself to some socks.
Hmm. And
Um,
even though it's scary, it sounds like it would be a good challenge. And I think
Heck yeah.
you're going to get a lot of sock patterns coming your way. So then you can, two birds with
Socks.
one stone. Is that two birds with one stone? Is it killing two birds with one stone?
It
That's,
is killing two birds.
yeah. Well, then you can tackle your, I don't really use patterns and I don't really make socks in one go.
Yeah, that would be a big tackle. The
Mhm.
way I did the socks was a YouTube video. I didn't use a pattern. I watched a YouTube video. Yeah.
That's
I
crazy. And
maybe that's why it was so hard though. I don't know. It could have been that like it definitely would have been more helpful to have both the written and the video. But it was
mhm.
one whole video. So maybe that was why that's a little intense.
Yeah, that's like rough to sit through in one chunk instead of like taking little bites from that. It's also really cool though hearing the way that making has evolved for you and going from something, even though you're an introverted person, it sounds like you've had a lot of experience being around people and having a community, even if you were more quiet or reserved in that. And then I'm like trying to imagine how terrifying it must be to like, okay, never been alone, going somewhere new, have no job, don't know anyone, and I'm just gonna sit with my anxiety. And that sounds like fun. No. And
Yeah.
so even then though, it sounds like it was taking care of you in a different sort of way, like in that moment. And then the evolution from, okay, I guess I could do that. Like you could have continued doing that, but whether it was your friends or whatever, the decision that like, this could be more fulfilling. This could take care of me in a different way because community is something I've been used to. So how do I build some sort of community or engagement? I'll open a shop, which is like also funny because that's not something most people do right off the bat. It's like, oh, let me take some time and really get doing before I open a shop up.
It definitely gave me I recognize now that like it gave me a salty relationship with Etsy, because like I get now like my stuff was like not quality. Like I was not selling like good things. And but I mean it's a learning thing, and like I just decided to dive in, and it I'm actually not even on Etsy anymore. It's just I was like when I'm decided to really dive into my business again this fall, with a lot more time, it was like, okay, I can either put myself on someone else's site or just like finally do it and like commit to just diving right into the whole like building a site, like doing it for me. And it was one of the most exciting things I've done for my business in so long. And I thought the feedback and reception of it all was really great. So I feel good about it.
Yeah. And I don't know, it's exciting to hear, and I like get excited hearing you talk about like that was probably something that was also really scary. Like, yes, it was exciting, but also scary. And you did it anyway, and it went so well. And like, your website's amazing. If folks haven't seen it yet, you want to tell folks what it is? And I can actually put it in the description too, so folks can check it out.
It's knittingbydarian.com.
Official.
It's really cool.
Yeah. And I'm kind of curious. So, like, I guess we're talking about knitting being one way of taking care of yourself. You're dropping some hints or alluding to like, oh, I got more into my knitting this past fall. But I'm curious what else self-care looks like for you, how else you take care of yourself, if there's been any sort of evolution in that part of your journey that you want to share with folks.
I feel like since it's the first week of the year, it's really cool time to like reflect on last year. I mean, it kind of sucks to like bring it back up, but it's also a really good time to look at the positive because that year's over. Like it may literally just be like, oh, we got one new calendar throughout the old one. Like it doesn't actually mean much in the sense of our problems, but I do find a sense of just like, okay, well, I can look at this way, or I can look at it with like a new perspective. And so I'm excited to like reflect on my transition of like self-care from last year. And so prior to last year, I went to live music festivals, just like bars, going to bars to see shows 3-4 times a week, going to like just small music festivals where you see the bands walking around, you say hi to them, they don't care. Like it's a community and it's super cool. Especially in the jam band scene, that's like the music I really like. And that was my complete life. And it's really hard, it's hard to express how much music has really just like saved me, brought me my people that I met my two of my best friends, their brother and sister, and I met them at an Aqueous show. Big plug to them, Aqueous. They're amazing. They're from Buffalo, biggest sweethearts, and they rage. So check them out, please. So they were at this Aqueous show with their dad, and it was like right before Halloween, and this girl's just running around in this banana suit, and she's just grinning, like a little drunk, just happy. And Ethan and I are there, just us two, and we meet them, hang out for the night, and we're best friends now. That was just over 2 years ago. Mandy's in my wedding. Her brother is just unbelievably close to Ethan and I, and just the group of people that is brought to us from music. Anywho, so going into 2020, then that has literally been stripped from us. We were really fortunate to get drive-in shows this year, but I had to find a different way. Like my anxiety was just through the roof, to the point that we'll probably talk about this later, but I'm not working currently because my boss allowed me to take like a leave of absence from work, because I was not doing my job well and I couldn't take care of myself. And you got to take care of yourself. So I'm not working right now. And so I needed to figure out a way to feel better. And so camping. This year was the year to camp, and it was a way to safely see my friends, to like see my people, my community. Like it ended up leading into meeting all of our other friends, like connecting us to their other friends who are just ended up being this big group of like-minded people that we have a Facebook group, so like we can have small events that are safe, but like all can like be connected while not feeling excluded. It's hilarious. And um so finding my community was really important to self-care in 2020. And being able to take a break, I recognized also like finding moments to be really present, even if it was just like breathing for a few seconds, like that was super beneficial, and I felt like is really self-care because we had the time to slow down, some of us, I know not all of us last year, and slowing down was super huge. And I'm unbelievably fortunate to actually get to say that it was my self-care and is my self-care until I go back to work soon. But one of my favorite things to do right now is I get up at probably between like 6:30 and 7. Um, and not all the time. Like some days right now have been kind of rough because it's like anxiety and like the holidays and drinking and stuff. But and so I'll make coffee and I'll sit in our like little like reading room, I guess we could call it like that. It's where Ethan works, and we have two couches or two chairs, and big windows. And I open a window a little bit, and I just sit and have my coffee and I knit, and just like breathing in like the cold, crisp air. One really connects me back to where I'm happy, which is like outdoors and camping and with my friends. But also is like super centering, and it wakes me up and I feel present. And I know even if I can only have 15 minutes to drink that coffee and breathe in that cold crisp air, like that's fine. That's all I need to like really jumpstart my day. So that's kind of how mine has evolved. I picked up a real hobby actually outside of knitting because I've always just been like, oh, I knit. Like I just knit all the time. Like if I knit for me, that's a hobby. But if I'm knitting for the business, then like it's a business. But it's always just knitting, and I feel like you might be able to attest to this too, Brie. But even if you're knitting for yourself, like sometimes knitting just doesn't. It's just not a hobby anymore, and that's okay because we love it just the same. We just love it in a different way. But I've started to sing, which I'm unbelievably shy about. But I do play with my friend Tony, who is
Okay.
the brother of Mandy, one of my best friends. And we started playing together. Like we'll do acoustic, or he sometimes brings his electric guitar over, and we just like have band practice. And yeah, quote. But yeah, so I've also had the time to like actually find a hobby, and which makes me feel really, really good and helps my anxiety, even though it gives me that like nervousness because it is something super new, and singing is really like being vulnerable. And I mean, I only sing in front of him and me, so it's not too vulnerable, but
That's so vulnerable. It's funny. I don't think you know this. I don't think most people in this fiber community know this about me, but music is like huge, huge, huge in my life. I think similar to you, shows and concerts, I like tell Michael all the time that's the thing I miss the most. And like dancing is big. When I was in Texas, I went dancing like 3 or 4 times a week. And like, I don't know, it's just something that you can't replace with anything. Like listening to music shows, sometimes I'll do that. And like, it's just not the same as being there. But I also sing, and I have been in bands for most of my life. and like didn't realize how much I missed it. I wasn't in a band even before 2020, but 2020 missing, I think, being around music, I was like, oh, I used to create music. Now I'm not creating it. I'm not being in it. And it's like, it's not, you can't replace it with anything else. And part of it, I think, is what I hear you saying with like all of your music, camping, all the things you're doing is like connection, but more than just connection with other people, connection with community. It's like connecting with yourself. Like, I don't, maybe this is.
Oh, totally. No, I think it's really great that you bring that up. Well, one, I think it's amazing that you just said all that music stuff, and you know that every time I find out something new about you, I'm just like, how have we not met before? Why do we not hang out all the time?
Have you ever been to Peach Fest, Darian? Did you used to go to Peach Fest?
What year did you go?
When I was,
my friends are on, because I have friends that have gone to go to Peach Fest every single year that I told to hop on here.
You might have met me at Peach Fest.
Oh my God.
When I was in Scranton, so it was maybe 2015 and 16. And
I was there in 16.
Darian, we might have met, but.
So like, what kind of music do you make? Or like, or listen to?
Everything, like almost everything, honestly. When I sing, so I started in a ska band for like 6 years of my life. I was in
amazing. I don't know much about ska. I know so little, but it's all from my friend Tony, and anything he says is just fucking hilarious. Hilarious. And so, yes, give me more.
So we were called the Dirtbags, and
amazing.
My boyfriend at the time's older brother, and my boyfriend played trumpet sometimes with them, and they were like, hey, can you sing? Can you come sing backup for us? And I was like, yeah, sure. And then they were like, oh, we have like shows in the city. And I was like, I can't go. I have like school tomorrow. And my parents were really cool about it. And like, I did, like, we played at the Bowery and like some cool like places in the village, and it was fun. But like we were bad. Like
and it's funny that you say bad, because it's ska already, so it's already has that like connotation that like there's like just levels of bad, but it's like, how amazingly bad can you kind of be? Mm-hmm. And that's not an insult. I feel like that's an objection to like that.
Yeah. That's because like my family was so supportive and would come to all of our shows. Like my grandparents.
That's amazing.
But like we were
hopefully they didn't get kicked.
No, they didn't.
No ska dancing.
It was usually just our families and a few random people, so there wasn't too many people dancing like that. But it was funny. Like we had our bass player was amazing. Our guitar player was great. We had a trombone player who was amazing. And then the singer who was the singer before I came in, my sister came in, wasn't a singer, but they just needed a singer. And he wrote the songs, and he like wasn't good. And he knew he wasn't good, but he was like so connected that everyone would, he just needs to not sing. And then if he just plays trumpet, you guys would be so good. But that's where I started.
So you saved the day.
Yeah, a little bit. But then all over the board, I've been in theater for most of my life. So like totally different.
Yeah.
The spectrum. And then in college, my boyfriend at the time and like his housemates were in like a folky kind of band, like Rivers and Roads. Anything like The Head and the Heart was like our inspiration. And then since then, just like playing with friends and whoever plays music and makes music. And I listen to like pretty much everything. I actually don't listen to too much rap, but I listen to a lot of folky, I don't call it bluegrassy, but like some bluegrassy stuff. A lot of like alt.
Heck yeah.
Alt. A lot of country now since I've been in Texas. Which is funny because
I listened to a lot of country in, I would say, like early 2000s to like 2013 or so, and then it just got like very pop
Mhm.
more so. Like it definitely, now that I'm looking back, like it was definitely way more pop than like the old country that, or like the like folky rock that um is like just a classic country
Mhm.
music. That's so amazing.
Yeah.
um but now I'm just like,
Mhm.
I don't know about this anymore.
Yeah.
But
It's different.
there's definitely some great country artists.
Mhm. But it's funny, just like music was such a big part of my family and like how we connected as a community. I think when I was younger, like there was always music on, always me and my mom and sister and dad dancing and singing together. And I listen to a lot of older music. Like Michael's always like, how do you know this stuff? Like so
Same.
much Motown and like 60s, 70s and 70s, 80s rock is like big part of my life. And um, I also DJ'd when I was in grad school. So I think that like expanded my
Your life, you're
knowledge.
so funny. I love learning about you so much.
My life
This
is
is
like
great.
really random. Whenever people like find, I'm like, if you could think of the most random thing that you could imagine I've done, like it's probably a part of my story somehow. But that's fine.
Just like you were like, yeah, Darian, I did poetry at a rave one time. So I know what you're doing right now. And I'm just like, what?
Exactly. How? I don't know. Just like,
I ended up there,
yeah, life
worked out.
circumstances and saying yes to things that are like, okay, maybe I should just try it. And like, I don't know. I'm like, yes, I feel like we're so similar in so many ways about like the connection, just connection being important, connection to other people, connection to the earth. Like, I know we've talked about that a lot and like connection to nature and even sitting with that window in the morning. I'm like, that sounds so nice in theory. I'm always jealous when people are like, oh, I wake up early and just like knit and listen and look out my window. And I'm like, I would love to do that. And like, I will never, ever be able to. I just can't. I'm not a morning person. Like, I just can't do it. And then also that piece of like connecting to yourself. And I'm always impressed. And you touched a little on deciding to take time off of work. And obviously, 2020 was a big year and it revealed a lot of shit. We were a pandemic and racial injustice was like on the forefront of everyone's mind. And there was a huge election that,
Or it should have been.
yes. Um, and I'm kind of curious if you're cool to talk about like, how did you, obviously, you made some evolutions in taking care of yourself, but what went into the decision to like take time off of work to take care of yourself? Where did that idea come from? Like what? I feel like that's something a lot of people would be scared to do or like not think to do as a way to take care of themselves.
Um, so I guess there's a little more backtracking to this period of being off of work. This is actually the second period of time that I had taken off of work in 2020. So when the pandemic hit, um, we definitely like all have our stories of like the way it hit. Um, it hit me super hard. So in on like March 8th to like a 10th or so, I was in New York City. I was in New York City. I was in the Javits Center, which a week and a half later after I was there was turned into a medical hub. Um, and the city was completely shut down within like 4 days of me leaving there. The day that COVID hit the country, like in a very serious manner, March 11th, I was packing up to travel home to Ethan's home in Indiana for two really special family events. We didn't go, um, but when I went back to work with just the overwhelming fear and connection of being in New York, and I genuinely was so afraid that being in New York I brought COVID back to the city, or back to Syracuse. Just that it was, I I had come into work on my, like, the last day, that both on the first time they had let me take off, was I came in and I looked at my boss, and I just was honest. It hit me abruptly, kind of like, I don't think I really discussed it with Ethan the first time around. I just had been in work, and I felt myself not functioning. Um, and to the point that, like, I then felt guilty because I work for a small business. I hold them unbelievably close to my heart, for obvious reasons. Like, what place lets you take off of work, and treats their employees like this? So I hold them very close to my heart, and I was just honest, and I told her, I was like, I am not functioning. I'm not doing my job well enough to be getting paid, honestly. Like, that's, I mean, I just felt that, and I didn't know what to do, but I was like, I can't do my job. And I want to do my job because I want to be there for them in the small business. So I had taken a short time off there, like 6 weeks or so, and then had gone back. And I mean, everyone knows 2020 just escalated. And it escalated quickly over the end of summer, and um, with George Floyd's murder. And being in a community, the coffee shop that I work for, Salt City Coffee, you should also check that out. Um, Being in a cafe, in that cafe, the owners picked that location to help improve the neighborhood. They definitely were in a location that was not an advantage to them or the business, but they wanted to bring um, a cafe to there. And also they started, at the time, was associated with a church and a nonprofit that, like, brought other aid to the community. But with everything escalating so quickly, COVID escalating so quickly, I just, I was terrified to work, honest. And that's a lot of what it comes down to. I was terrified to work. And um I had a couple instances where, because race, the issue of race is so high, that I was, there were some moments that I needed to learn from at work. And because of the anxiety of everything else, it was difficult to work in the community that we were in, for me, just because I wanted to be better, and I was trying to be better, and everyone else's tensions were also high. And it's hard to work in the service industry during a pandemic. Like, let's just toss that out there. Like, anyone working right now in the pandemic, especially in the service industry, like they're doing a great job, and it's not easy. And I just needed to take control of my anxiety. And so the second time, the time that right now that I'm on a leave, it was, the company is growing. I wasn't able to perform, and if I just didn't have confidence in myself. And now that I'm looking back on it, like, I think I tore myself down more than my boss actually was disappointed in my performance. Um, I'm a brand new manager. I was only managing for a year, a whole cafe, and we were going through an immense amount of growth. Um, and so not only was I learning to be a manager, but I was learning to change everything as we're going also. And yeah, I'll be honest, it sucked. Like, fuck 2020. It was terrible. And then I sit here and I'm like, don't complain, because I got to take a break. And I wish I had a better answer as to, like, how I knew, but I think it comes back to, again, that sense of community. And I trust my bosses. Like I knew I could go to them, and I don't know if it was a good thing the way I felt, but I felt that I couldn't do what they needed and
Mm.
be good for the business. And so yeah, my boss just told me like take time off, and he recognized the significance of the election and knew that I needed at least that amount of time off. And then COVID increased like tenfold over Thanksgiving. And so the holidays were rough. And but I in all honesty, like I feel so much better. And to like say that I was fortunate enough to like really get to analyze self-care over the last 2.5 months or so, and like really reflect on what I needed. And yeah, it if I know if I ever, I guess I learned anything or like have any advice coming out of all this is like we just somehow have to slow down.
Mm.
We really do, because I I mean, I've started seeing a therapist too, and that's helped a lot, but you just you don't even have time to process or think or even ask yourself like what you need. Like sometimes you people don't we don't even have time to be like, what do I need? And um oh, I wish I could remember the maker that you had on. But she said that like how can you take care of others if your glass is only half full? Like you got to take care of yourself before you can take care of others. And I know you can definitely attest, like makers want to take care of others. And so that really hit home for me too, watching your self-care live.
It's so
I feel
cool.
like I'm talking so much.
It's so cool though too to hear. I mean, how fortunate you are for like being at a small business and being at a small business that was able to meet some of your needs and give you that time and space. But it also, and I'm sure it's a lot. I'm sure it's about them because not every boss is going to be like that. But I also have to imagine that that's a testament to you and like your connection with them and your sense of, I don't know, you talk about them like they're your family and like that's your business and like it's not. Obviously being a manager is a big deal, but I imagine that if I can feel that like from how you talk about them, that's probably something that they felt and knew about you to enough to care about you and say like, yes, obviously we want you here. Obviously they probably need people. It's a pandemic and things are crazy. And we care about you and what you do for us and with us enough to know that, like, yeah, we want to support you and want to have you back, right? I know other bosses might be like, yes, take time. We'll fill your position, or like, we'll see what happens when you come back. But the fact that your workplace has been so supportive is like, damn, I wish everyone had a workplace like that and like how much better of a place this world might be if we were with
Yeah.
who care about us and care about each other and care about themselves. Feeling fortunate.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Carrie, we all work all the time, and it's just become like natural, to the point that I mean I know you saw this tweet, but like to the point that people were asking yesterday during the domestic act of like terrorism, asked if they should be working. Like we actually thought about like, well, do we do this live? Like, and that's not because we were like, oh, we need to work like that. What? But at the same time, maybe our subconscious was like, well, do we just work through this? And it's like, no, no.
Mm-hmm.
And and that's not even. for us as two like liberal white like women that like to that it was, I would say we were affected more so on the outside of the meaning of what happened, the true meaning of what happened yesterday. It just it just we just again need to slow down. Like it's just proving that like we need time to and process yesterday also. Like
Mm.
we especially seeing on Instagram, I thought it was really interesting. Laura posted, she was like, I just don't even know what to say right now. And Ethan said to me this morning, he's like, we what you don't need to know what to say. Like we need time to process,
Mhm.
but we're always go, go, go. Like we
Mhm.
need to have an Instagram post up today. We need to know what we're going to say right now. We need to have an opinion before X, Y, and like this person, and this person has an opinion. And it's I wish I had the answer as to how we do that. And but I mean, yeah, I just wish I had the answer on how to do that. And I wish that more people were fortunate enough to get this experience because I truly do think that like my mental health is just miles from where it used to be. And I definitely do feel a little sad that people don't have this opportunity like regular, like like just available for you.
Mhm.
Like mental health should be something that's taken seriously. Like we should have mental health days at work, like legit. Like I know people say that, like, oh, I'm just taking a mental health day. Like you say it on your Instagram and everyone's supportive and all our maker friends are like, yeah, good for you. Like did something for yourself or go take that bath or whatever. And but to like say that at work, like or for work, that's hard. And people don't do that because you get what, 3 sick days?
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess I'm thinking about that like pressure to be doing and working and doing more. I mean, I see it all and everywhere. I see it personally in my friends and my family and at work and talking to clients, and it's like, oh, I'm feeling really distracted, or like I'm having a hard time getting through homework. And it's like, yeah, no shit. Like, what? Of course you are. And they're like, oh, but that's a problem. And it's like, why is that a problem? We're going through literally things that have never, ever happened before on this earth, all at the same time, things that are incredibly heavy, that are incredibly taxing, that are harmful, traumatic to so many people. How are you supposed to be feeling right now? And it's like, well, I don't know. I have to like get my stuff done. And it's like, man, like says who? And so what if you don't? And I think I wish there were more people out there who are like, I'm not expecting as much of you or from you. Like,
For sure. Even yourself. Like even for yourself, like expecting less of yourself because like I'm reading a book. I wish I remembered the title, but I just started it about goals. And it's like you need to get out of the habit of not finishing your list at the end of the day. And it's like it's not that you need to work harder, it's that you need to recognize that you're putting too much on your plate.
mm-hmm.
And um it's so true. Like I'm only started like yesterday, but even seeing my list and being like, okay, well, I now recognize that like this was an overreach, but this I wasn't focused enough during the hour that I wanted to do that. Um, but yeah, it's so tough. And I know your therapist, but my therapist said today, like she's like, I wish I had more to say because like even and I know that was like super genuine and she's really thought about it and like cuz we have really great conversations and sessions. And But I could just tell that she was like, I wish I had more for you, but like this is just so, no one's ever experienced this on, even on a professional level. Like, could you have trained for something that 2020 was like? And my therapist is much older than you and has a lot of years of experience, so it's like,
yeah, and it's a really unique and interesting time that I'm grateful for. And this sounds strange maybe when you first hear it, but like, we're all going through the same shit. We're not all going through the same shit. We're all going through shit. And there are a lot of things that are impacting each of us at the same time, right? Like, we're all going through COVID, whether it's impacting us differently or not. There aren't that many times, at least in my life, that I've experienced that outside of like big historical events, right? You think like 9/11, it impacted everyone differently, and it impacted us all at that time. And it's a really weird thing and time. I always say like to be a human, but like to be a fill in the blank, and like being a therapist and going through the same stuff that your clients are going through at the same time is really weird. Like, that doesn't happen. It usually doesn't happen. And when we talk about training, it's like, how do you work with a client who's gone through something that you've gone through? Like, their parents are divorcing, your parents have divorced, but like, it's usually not happening at the same time. Sometimes it does, but even those things, your clients don't usually know what's happening to you. But now it's like, no matter where you go, who you talk to, people know that you're going through stuff, even if they don't know how exactly it's impacting you and what your specific situation is. It's like, I've seen, at least in my personal life, which I'm really grateful for, and especially at my work, that there's more understanding that, like, I don't know exactly what they're going through, but like, yeah, it's 2020. Of course they were going through some shit. Like, hold a little bit more space and empathy, and maybe lower those expectations I had for that person, or understand that they have other stuff going on in a way that hopefully we take forward with us and take forward into our work.
Fingers crossed.
I know. Please, let's take some things away from this shitstorm of a year. Yeah. And I guess I'm kind of curious too, and I'm looking at our time, and I know people are probably like hungry, or I don't know. We have 7 people still here. But
That's more than we had earlier.
I'm curious. Like, obviously we're talking about all the challenges. We're talking about how I think it's really cool that whether you knew it or not, you were able to like trust your gut enough and trust your community to say, like, this is what I need. Even if I didn't think a lot before, in that moment, you were like, this is what I need. And I have to do that. And I know that's hard for people. Sometimes that doesn't work for people. Sometimes people can't do that. And I'm curious, like, with the challenges that you've faced and could have faced in taking care of yourself, what do you think it is that keeps you committed to doing what you need to do to take care of yourself? Like, what keeps you from being like, fuck it, I can't keep doing this. I can't keep going to therapy. I can't keep doing the things I need to do. Because it's a lot of work. It's hard. Like, these things aren't coming easy right now. The world isn't necessarily set up to make those things like enjoyable or easy to do. And so I'm curious what keeps you going in this self-care kind of journey of yours.
To be honest, like, probably my community, and I mean that. I know, so for the listeners out there, so I have like 2 really main communities that have just shown up so big in 2020, and one of them is a like group that I talked about earlier with my music friends and camping. But also the second group is my book club.
Don't do this. I'm gonna cry.
And no, I'm not. I won't make you cry. But I, back in what was it, May or so? When was that? Ugh, such a horrible year of time. Bree reached out to me after George Floyd's murder and just noticed that like I was a little bit vocal about my opinion on everything and like could just tell that I wanted to make change, but maybe I didn't know how. And um being an introvert, when I read the message of Bree asking if I wanted to join this book club, just to so our focus is like we just like are educating ourselves and we want to have a really safe and brave group that um is always learning. And it it took so much of me, and Bree and I talked about this a little bit earlier today. I almost said no, and my life changed by saying yes. My life is definitely so different because I joined this book club with a lot of really amazing people. And I think Bree has this amazing talent of just like bringing people together and this really beautiful energy of like just it's positive, but also like, hey, we're gonna do this in like not a stern way, but just like a we can do it together, and it's just really positive. Um and no matter what happened in 2020, I honestly I had a support group that somehow either has gone through it or is going through it together or knew what to say, or whether that be my group of music friends, knowing that we were all suffering so hard because therapy, like our music is therapy. Like that is life to so many people. Like that's what gives me life so often. And then to have this amazing book club of just one, like we have a lot of it was about like things happening in the United States, but we have Canadians in our book club, and to just feel that sense of like worldly community, and to know that like it really is, people have my back. And even if I make a wrong decision, like someone is going to be there and just be like, hey, it's okay. And I really just have come to realize that we made it through 2020. Like I made it through 2020. I'm making it through a pandemic, and it's, I don't want to say like I feel like I can do anything, but it's definitely made me feel like way, way stronger about like what I can handle as a person. And I really like one of my biggest things that I said going into 2021 was just like, I don't like, I don't, everyone had hardships. Like sometimes everyone wanted to be like, fuck silver linings. Some people didn't have silver linings. Some people could see way more silver linings. Like I think the biggest thing about 2020 is just recognizing that like we made it. And that's a huge ass accomplishment. And if you can't think of anything else that came out positive of 2021 or 2020, the fact that you're sitting here today during 2021 proves that you made it, and that like you are hands down a stronger person than you were in 2019. And I don't know why that just stuck with me for so long, and maybe it's something in like the middle of the year that changed that I'm just not like recognizing. But I think um what I've like helped self-care wise and learned is that it's okay to have others love you before you recognize you love yourself. Like sometimes you need your community to give you the confidence, and sometimes you need someone to just continue to tell you that like you can do it, or you're beautiful, or you're talented, whatever it may be. Like you don't you don't have to be alone before you find love. Like it that just is weird to me. And so I think really finding community and feeling valued is what made me realize that like, hey, 2020 is a bitch, but I made it through, you made it through, and I feel like you can also say that like the connections that we've made this year have just been really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't think I can add anything or say that any differently or better than you already did. And it makes me curious about, and I'm dying to know what you want folks to try.
Oh yeah.
Whenever they watch this, and I want to hear about your homework. And it's so funny because I say this sometimes, I don't know what the homework is before anyone watching this does. And it's so hard if you know me to not know when I could just be like, Darian, tell me what it is.
Tell me.
I don't, and it's so hard, but it feels really cool to find out with other, I don't know, that community and connection. Like, I don't want to know things by myself. Like, that's not fun. The fun is in doing it with people. And then it's really fun as I'm talking to folks, guessing what I think their homework is going to be. And so I'm like, oh, it's got to be about connection. Oh, maybe it's about slowing down. I don't know what it is. And so I'm dying to hear what you have to say.
Okay, so it might be cheating a tiny bit, but I have kind of two. Just because of the circumstances of yesterday, I prepped for the live and thought of something else, but then because of what happened at our Capitol yesterday, I'd also like to throw in this just like I guess a little advice kind of challenge. But my first one before yesterday's events was I think for me anyway, self-care a lot of the times is being really present. Being present helps slows down my anxiety. Being present helps me recognize like what is in my surroundings that I can control. And so one of my New Year's resolutions is this it's probably, it sounds really weird. But I go outside and I make sure to touch the earth every single day and to just sit there and like breathe like one or two like really deep breaths and just like it's grounding and one I don't think or two we don't touch the earth enough like we're beings on this earth that like gives us life um and so I think even if it's one moment where it's sitting sipping your coffee and you walk outside on your porch and take in a breath of air, but just finding any time to be present and like just connect with yourself, like center in on yourself and um, it's hard to say what being present feels like, but I feel like you'll know when you're there. And I think that's something like that could be a challenge, that could be hard to figure out and slow down and find that something that works for you. So being present, finding a way, even if for a moment to just be present. Or if like a mom, I thought of this, like a mom just like chaos all the time for moms, a lot of times. Just taking that half a second to just step out of the kitchen and like look at the chaos. Like chaos can be awesome and amazing things can come out of it and but just being able to breathe and look at it from afar could like be really grounding. And then the second one, see, oh kitty, see. And then so the second one that it's not really, I don't think difficult. It might be for some people because we are super addicted to social media and technology. But because of the things that happened last night, because of the hypocrisy that was shown in our country towards the Black community, towards the Black Lives Matter movement, the fight for social justice and the fight to end white supremacy and to bring that forward in our country, it is a marathon. It is not a sprint. And one of the books that I've really connected with, oh my gosh, what's his name? Oh my gosh, I literally just huge. His last name is Echo, Acho. He's the author of Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. He has an amazing series on Instagram. Emmanuel, there we go. And that is one of the biggest advice that I think he gives outside of answering all the questions. Is this is a marathon, and I think that applies to literally everything in life, like any hardship in life. This is a marathon and not a sprint, and you have to be able to recognize when you need to shut something off, whether that's media or an argument you're having with a family member in your ear. Like, hey, you love your family member, but maybe putting this argument on hold will save the relationship and your mental health. So just recognizing when to shut things off and say, like, I've had enough. I'll pick this up tomorrow.
Okay. Reflecting
that was a lot.
Reflecting on both of those, part of me is like, oh, yes, not what I would have guessed. I don't know if I ever have like a clear picture. I just have like broad brushstrokes of maybe what I would have guessed. The first one, and they feel more tied together. I don't know, maybe they feel more separate to you because you came up with them at different times, but hearing them, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Like setting a boundary to put something down also helps you stay present and connect with yourself. And they can be separate things, I guess, but I could see them as being.
I definitely see it
together. But the first one makes me really excited because I remember when you told me that you were doing that for yourself, I was like, oh, that's so cool. Like, that's like, so Darian and like being like, yeah, I'm cool. Like she found that thing. And then I was sitting on it. And a few times in the past month and a half since Thanksgiving. So I haven't been in the office. We were going into the office like 1 or 2 days a week since Thanksgiving, right before Thanksgiving. And there have been like several weeks where I've said to Michael, like, when was the last time I left the apartment? And like, whoa, weird.
Yeah.
But also like, my relationship with nature is weird. I like grew up in kind of a city and didn't feel like in nature ever unless I was at the beach. So like my family has a beach house, and it sounds like stupid. Michael, my partner's religious, like actually religious, and goes to church. So he kind of gets annoyed when I say this, but like I don't think he understands that like me and my mom would always say growing up, like the beach is our church. And like I feel connected being at the beach, having my feet in the earth, hearing the ocean. I feel connected to myself. I feel connected to the earth. I feel connected, I don't know, to like the universe. Maybe that sounds cheesy, but like
it's spirituality just in a different way. Yeah.
And I think that's like, he was raised very Catholic. I was also raised Catholic.
Yeah.
He's like, no, you have to go to church to talk to God. And I'm like, do you though? Like, can you just be in the universe and like talk to whoever you need to talk to? But it was always the beach. And like, I never put together that like, the beach is also the earth. And like the beach is nature. And like, yeah, grass is like, and dirt is weird and like gives you allergies and makes you sneeze. But like, it's the same thing. It's just a different form. And so I was reflecting on that. I'm like, man, maybe I should do something like that. And so I haven't yet, but now I feel more compelled than ever. Even like, dude, I have a balcony. It's not like a big balcony, but I have a balcony and a giant tree is right there that I could probably literally reach out and touch. And like, I feel shame in being like, yeah, I sometimes don't even go outside on my balcony. And like,
don't feel shame, because I really feel that unless someone points it out, it's just something we don't think about. And also our book, like, obviously that's what we think about too. And it's, I mean, because there's definitely I'm sure an assumption, because we're walking on the earth every single day. Mm-hmm. But are you actually touching? No, we have shoes with soles and 3 layers of something else in between that and your foot. And yeah, And I just think recognizing that, like, the earth is a living, like, it's a being, and it's amazingly grounding.
Mhm. And I'm like, oh my gosh, now even hearing you say that, like clicking in, like yoga was such a big part of my life, and going to the yoga studio and the community, and in the summers doing yoga on the beach in the morning. And like so much of that is putting your feet on the earth. Like just feel that your connection to the earth, laying down, feeling your body on the earth. And like even the last month, I've switched it up and haven't been doing yoga. And I'm like, whoa, like I'm missing so much of that I probably didn't even realize. And I obviously appreciate your grace in being hard on yourself, or being shameful isn't going to help anyone. And I'm curious too how that connects with asking folks to be present and be in the moment and not thinking about the past and not thinking about the future is obviously a hard thing. And you kind of said it yourself. I know this is hard.
Especially when you have a little phone in front of you all the time.
Do you have thoughts on, or advice maybe on how, not necessarily to do it, but how to treat yourself, how to be in a relationship with yourself in trying to be more present and going through that process? That's been helpful for you, maybe?
So I have the easiest yet hardest thing. You just have to say yes to yourself.
Hmm.
And that has definitely helped me. And I think it's totally different for every single person. And as someone who is, I would still define myself as an introvert and anxious, and I'm an overthinker. Um, and so to like have confidence in a big decision or making a move to like ask to leave work is is not something I would have thought I would have had for myself like 2019. But just like recognizing that, like, oh yeah, like go camping with your friends this weekend. Like switch your schedule at work so you can go camping this weekend. It's not a big deal. Like
Mm.
I recognizing that like not one part of your life defines you, I think also helps like allow you to explore different parts of who you are.
Mm.
And because we're raised and told like our society pushes your career, it's like, oh, well, what do you do for a living? Like maybe we should start asking people like, who are you? Like, and that sounds like a weird question, and that's just like me kind of like word vomiting this thought process right now. Um, but that question is really intimidating to so many people today, and myself included. Um, but yeah, I lost my train of thought on that now.
That's okay.
But yeah.
I like that concept of like saying yes to yourself. It sounds like trusting yourself. And one of the cool things I know that was really transformative for me when I think I may have talked about this in an earlier video, when I was learning about like being present and being more mindful of my space. I know my tendency personally, like as an overachiever, as a doer, is like, okay, well, now I need to be perfect at being present and like trying to. I used to hate yoga. Actually, it's really funny. Like I hated it because I'd be like, my mind would be going all these different places. I'd be like, there's so much I could be doing, always like doing instead of being. And when I was in it, oh my gosh, if my mind was thinking about somewhere else, I would like beat myself up and be like, oh my gosh, that's not what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be present. Stop thinking about that. And I remember talking to a supervisor of mine that was like, you're missing the point. And I was like, well, yeah, obviously I know that because I'm not doing it right. And he was like, no. He was like, I am so excited every time you have a thought that comes into your mind when you're trying to be present. And I was like, wow, that's rude. Like, why would you be excited that I'm not doing this? And he was like, no, I'm excited because that is doing it. Like, doing it and practicing this and practicing mindfulness and practicing being present isn't having a clear mind and not thinking about anything. Doing it is when those things happen, being kind to yourself and being compassionate and letting yourself go back into doing it instead of getting caught up in this like criticism and like self-degradation that happens. And he was like, I don't ever want you to get to a point where you're not having thoughts come up, where you're not feeling distracted or not feeling interrupted, because then you're missing the opportunity to do it. And it's about the process of doing it and not the end goal or product that you think it is. Like, I don't know where, I don't think it was just me, like, but where that's society got the idea that that's what it's supposed to look like, because it's not. And I was like,
I mean, I think there's like meditation, and that's different. Like, that's very different. But I would say what you're doing and your goal of that practice is to not be completely, because I don't think, I mean, meditation is being present, but I think you have to be present to go into meditation. And there's, I mean, I don't know, but I would say there's a difference. I would feel like that's comfortable.
yeah, I totally think it's like what type of meditation you're doing. Like, I guess obviously stereotypical, like sitting there and maybe having one word or one mantra over and over, but there's like so many. I've learned about like walking meditations. I've learned about dancing meditation and like movement meditation, and like, oh, that's not what I thought meditation was. But like, just that reframe totally flipped it on its head for me, that like, oh, this is about the process. This isn't about the end goal. And so hoping that as people, I guess that I hear that in what you're sharing of like trying to connect with nature, trying to touch the earth, trying to do that, trying to be present. It's okay if you're not doing it perfectly, because that's like not necessarily the point. Like, that's not the point of your homework or challenge, is to be able to do it
Yeah.
just to do it anyway.
Yeah, especially because, like, I'll be honest, the I feel like the most present I am is only during that little coffee time in the morning. And sometimes even then it's like a great example was this morning where I woke up and I was on a mission to look at the news, talk to my family, chat in our book club. Like, it was there's so many other things on our mind, and I think you're totally right. Like, the challenge of being present is not really to be successful, but to recognize the challenge, literally, that it is to get there. And so that's really what I want to hear. And yeah.
Cool.
So
Love that. And I think whether it's tied to that second piece of it feels like the flip side of the coin, like saying yes to yourself by saying no to something else, saying no to social media, saying no to a conversation with someone that's just not what you need to be doing right now. Maybe saying yes to other conversations and other things, but saying yes to yourself by sometimes recognizing that means you have to say no to other people. You have to say no to the assignment or the expectation or the thing that you're supposed to be doing, and instead taking that time to like be present. Have a real conversation with someone. Be present during a conversation. Like, whoa, what would that be like right now in this world? To like be present.
Yeah, fully present, especially like as someone who suffers through anxiety and like mental health struggles, like when you ask your friend how they're doing, like right now through everything, like when you know your friends are sad, like really ask them how they're doing. And even if that's your being present moment, having that deep conversation, like I think I think building connections too is having those hard conversations and having those intimate like life experiences exchanged through dialogue. It's is so important. And like, I mean, I yeah, that's how I met all like both communities that I talked about earlier. Is we have some really deep ass conversations, and sometimes we don't come out happy, but someone always reaches out and is like, hey, let's talk about this more and like see how we can both learn from this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's amazing. Like, it's connection, it's being present, it's taking the time to value what sometimes needs to be done, like with an instance of what we're learning happened yesterday. Like, we need to learn from that.
Yep. And holding grace for yourself through that process, that like being scared or worried about saying the right thing or doing the exact right thing in an interaction with someone, not letting that keep you from having those difficult conversations, because the stumbling is it that's doing it. It's not nailing it and getting it right. It's fumbling through, it's making mistake, it's giving yourself grace, it's giving other people grace and listening to other people. And like all of that, the process feels so much more important than
the more you fail, the more successful you'll probably be.
Mm-hmm.
Failing more means you're learning more.
Yeah.
And I say this like confidently, like I actually know what I'm talking about. My book just talked about this, like my goal setting book. And it really resonated with me because I'm always so worried about failing or not trying something new because I don't know how to do it. Well, no one fucking knows what they're doing. Like no one, everyone is learning as they go every single day, especially with all of the things that have gone on in 2020. It's yeah. Don't be so hard on yourself. I feel like it's probably the sum of what all of this live means today. Take it easy and don't be hard on yourself.
There are so many things that are standing out, like the connection to just connection to whatever, the giving yourself grace and compassion for yourself, and being present. Like those are like three big trunks of this conversation that I think I'm taking with.
It was so good. It was a really great.
And
this is great. I know. I feel like we could keep going.
I was gonna say, I keep talking forever. Michael's probably starved. I'm like set up at my kitchen counter so Michael stays away, because sometimes he comes in and just does really loud things, and I'm like, hello, what are you doing?
I know that.
Probably starving, so I know we should go, even though I probably could keep talking for forever. It was so great.
Thank you.
Express enough my appreciation for you as a human, period, for you being here, for you sharing with us vulnerably. I know I'm going to speak for other people, that this conversation likely impacted a lot of folks tonight, and I'm just really grateful to know you and have had this conversation with you, and excited to chat with you in the future, probably, hopefully, in more ways like this. I mean, I don't talk with you, but and see kind of where you are at some future point. And if you're watching, definitely I'm going to post probably tomorrow at this point, because that's when I want to do it.
Because Michael's hungry.
Because Michael's hungry. I'll post Darian's kind of 2-pronged challenge, and don't forget to tag me and definitely tag Darian. And I know I'm excited to hear about what those process of trying to do these things has been like for you, and not just if it goes well, but I'm really excited to hear about, like, let's hear about how terribly it went. Let's hear about how hard it was. And that's the stuff that is exciting to me. And it sounds like to Darian too, to do the hard, scary things. And so definitely tag us. I didn't choose a winner yet for December. And I will. So if you didn't post yet, use the hashtag self-care collaborative 2020, and you'll be entered to win that December prize, which is going to be something from my shop that I'm super excited about. And I think that's it. Come hang out with us next week. We have a really good maker next week. I say that every week.
It's cheating. Because you've got an amazing group of people, really. Like this, so quick, this note. So Kelly from Knitbrooks was your first person. Her challenge, I remember, was just taking 1 hour out of the week, whether that was a consecutive hour or separated, to self-care for yourself. Just do whatever you needed to do. I started this shawl and I finished it over the holidays. Well, when I say finished, I mean it's casted off. I didn't weave in all the ends or add a tag yet, but it's a shawl and it's made out of Malabrigo Rios, and I've never really made anything out of super, super nice yarn. So thank you for having a really awesome collaborative, because I probably wouldn't have done this for myself. And I wore it on New Year's Eve, and I just kept telling, I was a little drunk, but I just kept telling Ethan, I was just like, I just love this piece so much. Like, it's perfect. I'm really proud of it. Like, it was my project. And so, yeah, thank you.
I'm just glad that it came together in the way that it did. And so many amazing makers trusted me enough to be like, yeah, I'll come do this thing with you. And it's turned out to be so amazing and so much, maybe not more impactful than I hoped for, but it's been more than I could have imagined. And I'm so happy, and that shawl's beautiful. And
thank you.
Thanks for being you.
Thank you for being you. I really mean that like a lot.
Everyone, take care of yourselves. Take care of each other.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.